All right, so I'm going to move on to my panel because we have 4 people on the panel. I think Ivy's coming back to join us. So I'm going to go back and share screen. Thanks so much, Suzanne.
Thanks, LeiLani. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. I think, can you see my screen? Hi, Giovanni. You guys can see my screen. Okay. So on our panel today, and Doug might be pinging Ivy to make sure she knows she can get back on if we lost her. Maybe she's over on the other side. And Rich, you can share camera now too. Hi. Good to have you. I'm sorry about the crossed wires yesterday, Rich.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that. I was traveling yesterday, so.
Yeah, that's totally okay. We're glad to have you. Well, we just, we want to get kickstarted with a bunch of questions, but I want to start with you, Rich, first to give us a little background before I launch into pelting all of you guys with questions. So can you give us a little update on Hilliard and what's happening there?
Yeah, so my name is Rich Boettner. I'm Chief Technology Officer for Hilliard City Schools. It's a suburb of the Columbus, Ohio area. We have about 16,500 kids in our school district, and we started a one-to-one program probably 8 years ago. And what better preparation for a worldwide pandemic than doing one-to-one? Little did we know that we were preparing ourselves for what would be, you know, obviously one of the most challenging times in education that we've ever dealt with. So we are excited that our teachers and our kids did a phenomenal job through a very tough time. That's not to say we didn't have tough times. Obviously we did, but it was a learning process for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are in the Chief Technology Officer seat.
Yes.
So I'm sure your complexity took off like a rocket. Do you want to characterize that a little bit?
I think the one thing that was a constant was change. Obviously, every single day there were new questions for 18 months, and I definitely thought that the beginning of this school year things would be so much simpler, and things continue to be challenging. And I think that Dr. Simon hit it pretty hard and pretty well. That the political environment has had a humongous impact on education, especially in the last few months. But it's been one of those things where the big thing is, Dr. Simon, you did a phenomenal job. Relationships are so important. The number one thing on getting through this together as well as being successful.
Good, well said. Okay, so first question, I'm going to come back to Giovanni first. It's Learning Council's take that the future is a leveraging of an extreme higher level of technology, logistics, workflow, the mixology of things in order to arrive at a moment when you are much more perfected, precise use of the human component. So technology in order to be more human. So I want to ask you your opinion of that and where and when that is going to come to fruition, if not already.
And I would imagine. I mean, that's a really, really complex question, of course, but it's being met in different places at different times. I think that when we think about pre-K through 12 education, there's an expectation that we all take a step forward together, or it's not real. Mm-hmm. When we were looking at our one-to-one program at a high school I taught at, now this would be in 2007.
That's like a million years ago, Giovanni.
And yeah, we were looking at schools that had been doing one-to-one for 10 years prior to us. Right. Yeah, we had to travel to independent schools. We had to travel to private schools. So there were these pockets that were there. If 2007 sounds like a long time ago, well, then 97 would have been, pretty long as well. So everyone's in different places. And I think that the pandemic sort of did a leveling of that. Because, we've with one-to-one deployments, everyone's familiar with the hesitancy topics and things like that. On that human level, it's not the teacher's ability to use the computer to teach. It's the teacher's ability to have such an understanding of the computer to help the student learn, and that's the piece. We gave teachers computers before we gave students computers so that they could get to that point, right? But it keeps coming back to the human piece. You don't get there without that. You don't get there without accounting for that. One of the biggest mistakes that I made early in tech deployments was I had the right answer. So I assumed that should just make all the doors and windows fly open because we were right. No, you have to get people there, and there's so many stakeholders. It's not just teachers now, it's families. Families are concerned about screen time in the aggregate because they want their children to be able to use it at home. So they don't want school consuming all that bandwidth during the school day. But there's so many facets of this, things that you would never consider. The things that I think really rose to the forefront coming out of remote learning and the pandemic is the ability to support either the teacher or the student as a user of the technology. And the support has to come first. We don't think of that because we don't think of curriculum as a product. We don't think of, learning as that type of service, right? But most folks who deliver those kinds of software, they start with support, right? Before I can put it out in the world, I have to understand how I can support this. And things that do well have figured out, the perfect delta between a light touch of necessary support, but then over supporting what needs to be supported, right? So we don't think service before implementation. And maybe that's like a miss, but there was so much of an effort to just try. I watched schools that wouldn't even consider touching their bell schedule, right? The way they organize time during their school day, throw it right out the window when their problem was, how do I support teachers? So maybe we have a Wednesday with a flex schedule so that teachers can meet one-on-one with students. None of that innovation was happening under the status quo. So before remote learning, you can't even think about changing a minute of how time is organized in a school. After that, it's all on the table, because teachers are going back into buildings wanting that flex time.
Yeah, permanently.
So, permanently, because once you've had a measure of collaborative time, once you've had the ability to meet one-on-one with students who are truly struggling, it's like you're able to do that. You don't have to send them to the MTSS screener to have an intervention assigned for them. You have a flexibility in the day. Well, the supervision, especially with elementaries, for the little people, you can't just have free range Google open workspaces for children, right?
Right.
Yet teachers found that to be very valuable.
Right.
So these are interesting problems and they need to be solved. And then the tech utilization follows, how we organize time within a school, the flexibilities that we provide. Remember, those flexibilities to parents can be nightmarish, right? I have a school where my daughter goes to where now like every Wednesday's a half day. And there's a great reason for it, but now there's childcare considerations. So this is why nobody touched a minute of their existing schedules in the past. But it's not a reason to no longer think about these things going forward because we've seen the benefit of them. But sorry, okay. I'm like circling now.
Well, that was great. It made me go, and I'm going to call on Victor next, Dr. Simon. This, you called it delta, Giovanni. The delta between a really high, much higher level of tech and the focusing in as the leader on the perfection of the human moment This has caused some just to tell us they're going to those full chatbot windows and they're manning them 24 hours in order to support students remotely or in the building, right? Like they went home to do their homework and they still want to chat because they can't get this math program, right? So this perfection moment, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first I'd say it's always progress over perfection, so I would just give us the space to say, listen, little steps forward are important to gain. So that's just over time and I'm super type A, like I think I have a rising sun, Aquarius, moon and all that stuff. So I'm definitely a driver, but at the same rate, like perfection is just, it hits me that way. So anyhow, progress over perfection, but it's that's my first reaction to it. And secondly, it's like we have to be okay in our space as leaders and have the courage and opportunity to have these sort of findings that are out there. That's what I meant by culture eating strategy for breakfast in a presentation. It's like, if we don't see where this feedback or have opportunities for feedback to come in, I don't know that we'll even be able to think about those kinds of things as from a superintendent perspective or a leadership perspective, because we're not encouraging those conversations to turn over that rock that was talked about an hour ago. Mm-hmm. So when we think about this, we might have a board member say, it'd be neat, this is pre-pandemic, it'd be neat to have a homework hour in our library once or twice or every night from 6 to 7 o'clock, and you could just keep the library open in the school or something like that. And it's like, sure, that sounds great. And then instantly it becomes, well, I can't get my kids there, and now what are you going to run a bus? And there's all these logistics to it. It starts with a great idea, and it's like, well, we don't really have to do that. Can't we man? Back in the day would have been a telephone, like can we man a hotline? Now it's just a Google Doc, so like it's going to move so fast, whether it's a chat box or whatever it is. We have to be able to just be flexible enough to allow for those inputs. And if you're not able to sort of keep a scanning perspective on this is vigilance. Like if we don't have a vigilant perspective about our organization, we're going to miss the important stuff, Yeah. So that's what I would say. It's like we're constantly looking for these kinds of things. So here's something to take away from it. When a contract is written with our teachers, when we go in and say to them to memorialize this kind of mindset, then we don't know going into that bargaining room what all the stipends are for, what all the coaching positions are, what all the groups and clubs, if that's in your contract or not, whatever. But the idea is that if you don't have something in there for like a new club, a new type of way to do something, and put resources behind it, like I'm anticipating there's going to be new things we haven't thought about yet. And there's dollars that are behind that. So like that level of innovation has to already be, I use the term memorialized, but I use that because it's like super traditional and then tells us it's there for us. Like, don't be afraid to tap into that resource because we've thought to put it in place already. I kind of talked around the question a bit, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, that was excellent. And that's a really good piece of advice. I want to make sure we get out to everyone.
Well, it's leverage, right? I mean, like you can look at your checkbook and people say, hey, what's important to you? Well, look at your calendar, and I don't know who keeps a checkbook anymore. Like open up your bank app and look at what you spend your money on and where'd you put your time. That's what's important. Don't tell me about the other stuff because I know what you did and what you spent money on. So that's the way we try to build our budget. It's a tool. Just like tech could be a tool, budget should be a tool to support the important work, which you point out accurately is that human moment, that relationship, that experience. That's what we're gearing up to preserve and enhance. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously my point there, and I'm coming to Rich and then Ivy, such a good panel. We have all these different viewpoints. That humanity part is what is your secret sauce as public education. It really is. So coming to you, Rich.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I mean, one of the things that teachers always struggle with is getting over the hurdles when it comes to using technology. It's just, there are so many times where they will hit a roadblock, and if they don't have the support and they don't have the relationships with people within the building who will help them over those hurdles, they quickly will move on. There are too many variables. There are too many challenges dealing with the people that they work with, whether that be their kids or their parents or other staff, to deal with technology issues. So relationships, again, coming back to that idea that, those relationships are critical. And if you don't have people who can help your staff move forward, success will not follow.
Good point. All right, so Ivy, this is really great to have you back on, because we have a superintendent, Giovanni, who does a lot of innovation, Rich, who's on more on the tech side, and then instructional side. Your viewpoint on this whole discussion, Ivy?
I think looking at, and I recently interviewed, I'm in a doctoral program, and I interviewed my superintendent, and there was an interesting part of the interview where we were talking about like looking at schools and education as a business model, which we don't oftentimes. And so thinking about who is the customer, right? And your primary customer is your students. We have to have students succeeding, and, and then a lot of people look at parents and family as another stakeholder group that's a big customer, but then also looking at like your staff. So then what's your staff, right? So in a business model, are you completely concerned and solely concerned about your customer? Or do you also have to, build up and do what is best for your employees as well? So that, I think, is what a lot of teachers are feeling, and a lot of people, the boots on the ground in the last year and a half, especially. Instructionally, we are doing a lot more with social emotional learning, with well-being and that kind of stuff, to go along with that human aspect of, the people of it, right? And so educating our students and families, yes, and giving them resources for social and emotional health, but then also your staff. We have to take care of our own. We have a huge teacher shortage, and we have people leaving. I mean, I have never seen as many job postings this time of year as I have this year. Not even last year, but this year has been rough. So, education in general, but then also in technology, we have like positions like mine where it is a very useful position, but I don't directly teach students, and I'm not running a building. So I'm a position that could be cut with budget concerns and that kind of stuff. And it would do a huge disservice to the tech integration and the way all of that kind of stuff operates. So, I mean, just looking at it from that personnel side and a business minded side, businesses can't just think about their customers. They have to think about the people making their product as well, and make sure they're taken care of as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're living in a moment, right? Mm-hmm. Just what you just explained. I want to dig into that a little bit more with the whole panel. And that is, we have a staff shortage nationwide. It's not going to get solved anytime soon. This is we're already in a perfect storm of change, but then when you add the loss of people as an execution mechanism, it forces you to lean even harder on technology. So, and then what you have to think with this is you got to use your people, in that moment. So it's a structural shift. So coming back to you, Giovanni, first, are you guys seeing this too in Chicago Public? Like, what's happening there? What's going on with the staffing thing?
Yeah, a lot of this is, different maybe now in degree, but not in kind. We had issues with staffing in the past, being a large urban district. These are persistent problems. And one of the tragic things is, you have these teacher preparation programs, which are really comprehensive, right? A lot of people look at them and like dismiss it with a hand wave, as if
Why
teacher prep. Well, because then teachers go into schools and then either are reporting, hey, I don't really actually feel prepared for this. I was prepared for teaching and learning topics and things like that, but this particular classroom in this particular place, nothing that I've learned is working, right? So there's always been like a little bit, at least in a large district like Chicago, a backfilling. We're hiring employees and then immediately trying to retrain them, which is a really inefficient thing you can imagine. But then the other end of it is, so for the folks that look at teacher preparation programs and dismiss it with a hand wave, well, then you go over to the Teach for America side of things. And that's a fairly quick pathway to the classroom. And those teachers are looking for support because they're not prepared as well. So a 4-year program isn't doing it. A return to the classroom, being retrained from a different profession and then fast tracked to the classroom, that's not working either. So that disconnect is definitely worth disrupting, right? Because, well, then what is it that teachers actually need to be effective in the classroom? If it's not a traditional teacher prep program, if it's not a Teach for America program, does anyone really know what that is? So there's that. I mean, the amount of professional development that goes on in a school begs the question, do dentists spend this much time on their dentistry after completing medical school? It's always been an unusual thing, but what you tend to see that's happening in these sessions is people are fine-tuning it, right? They've got theoretical concepts for literacy, for numeracy, but now they really have to localize that to this school, this neighborhood, these kids. And that's not just a poverty issue. If you're teaching in an affluent area, there's a whole set of things that you ought to know before you go into that market as well as a teacher. So, that's kind of an interesting thing that persists year after year after year after year. Scarcity, as it is right now, certainly will provoke more get more people into the classroom kind of things. So again, it's another support problem than schools are left with. Somebody's going to pipeline and fast track teachers in the classroom, and then schools will have to figure out how to coach them up, so to speak.
Okay. Well, where this makes my mind go, what everything that Gio just said and also what Ivy just said, I put two together and I thought, and I'm going to throw this now to you, Victor, but I actually think that what's going to be necessary is a much higher prescriptiveness by the district on the curriculum map. Because then what you're doing with your teachers is you're plugging them in behind the map, just like we did in the textbook days. And you're saying, here's your core. You can fluff around it, make it your own, but I don't want you custom building everything. I want you to use what I'm giving you because I need you to be a plug and playable game piece because I have a shortage, right? So does that make sense? So I think we're going to be driving hard, and I'm coming to you, Rich, after Victor and Ivy, at a more prescriptiveness because of the staff shortage. What do you think, Victor?
I see it as just a targeted strategic approach, so we've tried to be as targeted as possible. We're supposed to be good stewards of the resources that we're given, and we serve under that perspective. I mean, our Board of Ed takes an oath to that level. So when that budget moved forward, I mean, we really are trying to make sure that the return on investment, so to speak, for each of the things that we have expenditure on or around, we're trying to get the most out of it, So I think that's been in motion to try to be more targeted. That could be state politics, that could be, regional politics too. But generally speaking, what we're seeing about this national shortage, right? Or yes, national, but for us locally as well. But I don't know that anyone could really go back to prior to COVID or pre-COVID and say, we could pick anyone we wanted. There was teachers everywhere just waiting, to come here.
Except for Texas. Texas had a surplus. Yeah.
Yeah. So Texas might have a surplus, right? So we'll take 1 out of the 50. But most of the case, we knew that there were problems. So one of the things that we try to be creative about is, and I think when you talk about being more prescriptive, I want to be cautious about overcorrecting, but at the same rate, it's like, let's be smart about targeting. So the positions like that Ivy just pointed out that she's doing, could they be cut? Well, if somebody does that for the wrong reason, that would, as you had already pointed out, Ivy, like that would be a disservice to many. So trying to justify what's important and getting the return on it is its own job. But then to bring this to that political aspect again, unfortunately, what we are hearing right now, and this is just a local or a state issue, is that yes, there's issues, budgetary issues, staff shortages, this and that. Well, teachers, if we could just raise the salary. Well, one way to raise the salary is to cut all these administrators and all these other positions. Like if you're not in the classroom, then this is something that should be cut because we got to pay the teachers more. And so the conversation usually just kind of shifts back and forth.
Yeah. And
when organizations are healthy in the sense that that's that buffering I'm talking about from the superintendent seat, that we could buffer that, shield that. We're not putting our head in the sand by any means, but we'll take it head on. Like, what does that mean to us? Do you see these positions that way, to our board, to our community? So we try to stay as far ahead of that as possible and really try to justify the positions that we have by the results we get. So we are e-learning school for our emergency days. We made a point early on in that, like, branding of that, the E for e-learning. Most people would say, oh, electronic, computer, no, the E is for engagement. Like, it's a snow day. It's too dangerous for you to come to school. So we want to engage you and with you in a different way. It's too dangerous to get here. So the E is for engagement. People looked at that and, oh, you're just trying to, get away with not having snow days or something. It's like, so you're trying to keep up with the narrative, the politics. But yeah, I do see it as more targeted work for sure. We're just smarter about what we spend our money on and what kind of results we get. Technology is helpful there, right? Immediacy of results, trying to see what those evaluations are. Getting that feedback so quickly. Conversations I have with teachers about data-driven work 10, even 15 years ago was more like, I don't know. It's the, autopsy approach. These are regular daily health checkups now that teachers are able to do. So we've become more targeted, just the nature of the tech and the work that we've been up to for the last decade plus, for sure. Giovanni mentioned 99 and 97. I was in Chicago Public Schools, small world, but I was there having a laptop issued to me. I believe it was in 99 when you gave when those were given out to teachers. So I was a high school teacher at that time. Small world.
Excellent comment. Well, I'm hoping that if the times get a little harder and stricter and people have to think about staffing cuts, that they do not cut administration, because I think we don't need to go the opposite way. I think the refinement of what tech can actually do when it works hard for you, I don't think you would need, you need more of that and maybe not as many teachers, because you can do things asynchronously with students. Anyway, that's just my viewpoint, right? But I think I'm right. Rich, what's your thoughts? Because, you're coming at this from the tech background, and probably everybody in the universe from the software side calls you every single day and emails you, blows up your inbox, right? Selling you all manners of stuff. So you know what I'm talking about. The mixology of tech could really bring a refined moment for what you use your teachers for. So the discussion about teacher shortage maybe is a moot one. What are your thoughts?
I think that going a little deeper into the idea of, are we being more prescriptive in what we're doing or need to be, and then bringing in the idea of data-driven instruction. Victor's right. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it was so hard to pull that data together as a teacher. You'd spend all your time pulling data and trying to disaggregate it, all of that. Thankfully, the technology has come to a point now where a good assessment system and a good assessment tool bank allows a teacher to very quickly pull that data together so that now we can start to be more focused on personalization and the ability to be designing learning plans that are more specific to each child. So some senses more prescriptive, but also in other senses more personalized for children, because every kid is in a different place. And while, yes, we have a shortage of teachers, and yes, we need to address those issues, and we'll be working on those things. At the same time, every kid, and especially because of the pandemic, has really even pushed our kids even farther to the extremes. And so we need to know, instead of painting with one brush, we need to know where every kid is and what their specific needs are. And technology is definitely a driver to help with that and can help teachers understand where kids are so that they can personalize learning for kids.
I love that. I love that. And so thank you for that. I'm coming back to you, Ivy, but I want to make a comment of something that a Nashville district said to us the other day with their event. And that is, they entered the COVID thing with a lot of coaches like you have, and people in your position. And then they shifted the focus of all those people during the pandemic because they had to move into a much more support role that's not necessarily tech only. It's the instructional design, it's all these other things. So they grew. And another district that we just saw in Orlando, I think he got to hire 7 more people, not a very big district. I think that was Hall County. So this position that you're talking about, and everything that I've said and everyone else has said about the change has occurred, and now the refinement of the teacher role alongside flanking the technology is never going to go away. So your thoughts on how much more you need in this whole humanity aspect of the refining the teacherness in the mix with this teaching and learning?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would love to work in that district that got all those additional
people. I know everyone else was jealous of him. They're like, what? Volusia County and Orange County. They were like, hey, how'd you get the budget for that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see that transition. And when you said they grew, I initially thought, yes, we all grew, right? We grew by leaps and bounds with what we're doing and what we know how to do and how much we use technology and that kind of stuff. And then we kind of did the opposite. So my perspective is we added 2,100 devices in our district, and then we actually lost some support staff in technology and in our instructional coaching team. So we've gained some positions back for this year, but it just, just piling on more and more of what you're doing. So when you are doing more of a support role, there's all kinds of things that you're being asked to do in different directions you're being pulled in. And while that takes things off of teachers' plates or whoever, you're doing those tasks for, it just is spreading everyone so much thinner. So I think relying on technology to try to automate some of the things that we're doing, try to streamline some of the things that we're doing. And, again, you have an example of someone, because I have an education background. And so someone with teaching certificates doing those support roles where you could have a staff member who does not have a teaching certificate accomplishing some of those same tasks, and just kind of being more strategic about your staffing and about your personnel and where you're putting those people to support those different staffs. You don't need teachers doing recess duty or teachers doing lunchroom duty. They don't need teaching certificates to do those things. They should be focusing on teaching.
Yeah, and so that leads to the very next question then, Ivy. So I'm going to have you answer this and then go back another round with the other panelists. And then maybe I'm going to ask one more question before I release everybody back into the wild, because we would have been at a half an hour by that point. But this aspect of the teacher workload and overwhelm is really causing Learning Council to look at structure shift, right? Like 75% of the teachers saying, I'm overwhelmed and burnt out on our January study. Like, this isn't getting any better, right? And when we step back and look at you guys out in the field, we love all of you, but you're overwhelmed. You never have enough people. You never have enough money, and you're riding two rails now. You're delivering the old way and you're delivering the new way. And then there's more competition from the outside. It's a structure shift moment, and you're being refined into a diamond from a piece of coal. So I think the structure conversation has to go deep. Like we talk about the hybrid logistics project that we have on our site, that whole Uberization thing. I think it's real. And so far we've had a huge number of superintendents already sign up to do, the benefits, what it's going to have to do for them. So what is your thought? I mean, because like you're sitting in a place where they should never have stripped you of staff. They should have given you 10 more, right? Are they even talking about structure shift there? Like, what is happening?
I think we're really still kind of in survival mode.
Yeah.
And so personally for my district, this year has been so much harder for teachers because last year we were in a unique position because we did offer in person from August.
Yeah, that is unique. None of was doing that, except for the places with a huge amount of first responders. Like even some of the New York districts had to do that for the police and the nurses. Yeah. Yeah.
So we had a virtual option and an in-person option all school year long, and you picked one or the other, and then so you could switch to virtual at any point, or if you got quarantined or whatever, and then stay virtual until semester, and then you could switch back to the other. So it was more clear cut, and we had dedicated virtual instructors, and we had those rosters built, and
two rails. Yeah.
Yes. And then, so then this year coming back to it, we had, maybe 10% of our students interested in continuing virtual learning. So we're like, okay, well, we'll just kind of outsource that to a different program that does online learning. We'll do that. And then we'll have all our teachers in person again. And what has happened is, we do not require masks in our district, which it's gotten very political, as you all know very well, to mask, to not mask. And then because we don't require masks, we require more students to quarantine. So that has been the issue this year that has really been taxing on our staff, is because a kid will come in and then they leave halfway through the day, and then they're quarantined, then they don't see them for 2 weeks. So then it's like, so you're not writing 2 rails, you're writing 15 rails because you have this kid who's been on quarantine, just got quarantined. And then this kid who's 8 days in and coming back tomorrow. And then this kid who's going to have to quarantine for another week because they were exposed to somebody. So it's like, you can't keep straight your 20 kids if they were blessed enough to only have 20 kids in class, you're writing a lot of different rails, and you're trying to differentiate for all of those different students. And then, students with IEPs that are on quarantine, and you have, you're trying to support those parents, and you're trying to support all of that. And it's, we have a lot of English language learners in our district. And, it's just
hard.
That is what has been harder about this year than last year.
And it's not going away anytime soon. I'll be surprised if it's over by 2023. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we talk about, well, if we went to, if we required masks, everyone, if we, if the vaccine came out for younger students, if whatever, and there's all these ifs and things, but it's like, well, it's not working. And if it ever goes back to normal, is it? So starting to think about those shifts and those just completely, this is the time to just burn it all down and rebuild, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go through this structure question with the other three, but then I'm coming back and I'm going to have each one of you give like a super positive, and you have to all give a different one. So start thinking about yours, Ivy. So structure, Giovanni, are you in the same sort of structure idealization kind of thought moment? What's happening over there at CPS?
Well, we're meeting the ask, so there are very few districts that have like an R&D division, right? So we're often meeting the task, meeting the demand of the moment. This moment was extraordinary, therefore it provoked more innovation than you normally see when folks are just trying to meet the demands and the tasks. So no, we're not looking at any structural transformation. There are contracts that govern a lot of what is done in a school, so we can want to innovate.
Union.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't know a district that doesn't contend with that, right? So you can't just wildly innovate. There's a couple of cautionary things as well too, because when I was entering the field, I had much more respect for my content knowledge. As I went further in my career and realized how many non-content based demands I was meeting of my students, and I was becoming a more multifaceted teacher, that dovetailed with starting a family, having children, and so forth. Certainly we want a qualified math teacher in front of our students, but that's not the question that a parent will ask after the first day of school. They're not going to be like, hey, so did you think your math teacher was qualified today? It was more a case of, did you like Mrs. McGillicuddy? Is she nice? Those are the kinds of things that are top of mind, and we know with children and we know with adolescents, everything they're learning is being mediated through emotion and everything else as well. So you don't really see niceness, supportiveness on many teacher evaluation metrics. It's really highly valued by students and families, but the profession is still very much in like a 13th century. It's the guild, right? It's, here are our trade secrets, and it's like, well, is it really that world anymore? I mean, the phone has the knowledge. So are we putting the right people in the human interactions where their job is more supporting, facilitating? I'm not a fan of the metaphor coaching, right? I like to think of orchestrating when you think of all of the things that a teacher has to get in harmony, right? Like it's not good enough to just have this group, this group, this group. It still has to be purposeful and towards usually a singular learning outcome or so forth. But the person who can facilitate that and do it with a positive growth mindset might not be the person who's like the Latin file or the person who just loves chemistry, right? And the humans get in the way of their love of chemistry. So, sometimes I wonder in terms of that structure, are the skill sets being matched appropriately for today's world, right? That's not a conversation that's going to end up on anyone's, collective bargaining bullet points. But it's there. Ask any parent what traits they value most in their child's teacher, and you're not going to get content expertise at the top of that.
Nope. Content is so 25 years ago. I totally agree with you. And I wrote a whole article on the Learning Council site about what is a teacher today. And I have a game you can download from our site, the EduJedi game, that you would do with all your teachers to force them to list their duties and then segment them out and talk about each thing that they have to do. I love what you said about duties. So Victor, I know you're chomping at the bit, and then I'm coming over to Rich and then back around.
Yeah, for sure. So you said you could have teachers list all their duties in one day? Oh
yeah, that would take days. What? Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah. So I say this often and try to spread it wherever I can, but like when I use the term teacher, it's a proper noun. It's teachers with a capital T. That's to me what a teacher is. Are there teachers that are lowercase t? Yes. And then we work to try to either coach them up, facilitate them up, orchestrate them up, or counsel them out to turn them into, capital T teachers. So last year for us, we started the school year on a simultaneous sort of, there was those that wanted to be remote, those that were in person were in the same space, and they were on camera. The teacher was doing both sets of instruction, dealing with both groups of kids, and it was tough, so very, very few were open, and those that were open didn't do it that way. So just very few of us. So we didn't have many places to turn other than inward and basically rely on each other and try to just, make it work. We knew from the summer that when people were signing up for their experience as families, we kind of, to Gio's point of meeting the ask or the task at the time, we had a split of 75%, 25%, 75% wanted to be in person, 25% wanted to be remote. You have a couple, 4 teachers at a grade level in a school. Oh, well, why not just have one be remote and then the other 3 will be this? And it makes it easy. And we got asked that in board meetings and all kinds of stuff. But the idea was, let's fast forward to what this looks like when we start to transition to 80% or 90% of kids back. Now I've got 1 teacher that might be expert in remote, 3 that don't know what the heck to do about it. What if there's an outbreak? What if we shut down completely? And so we didn't go that route. Everybody had to experience it the same way. And then we made it through the year. We get to the end of the year, and I think by the end we had maybe 5% of students were still remote. We started this year with about that. It's just around 4 to 5% of our students hovering there. It's a small number. They're holding out for the childhood vaccine. Is the reason that they're giving, which is weeks away at this point. And we did not do the simultaneous to open up this year. So we saw the number, saw that it was a small group of students, and said, we could meet the same standards that we're teaching in class by, sort of outsourcing this to what Ivy had said, selected a vendor, worked with them, but argued the point that we wanted to have our teacher liaison be involved in that experience so that it wasn't that they were completely in the third party world, that they were connected still to our school, had a chance to do at least some synchronous connection with that individual, whether it was in a classroom or somewhere in our school, so they constantly were able to see that the school's there. So for us, it's connections before content. And we're a 6-time national winner of a program called Capturing Kids' Hearts. That's out of Texas, but we've adopted that philosophy and that process years ago, and have gone on to be recognized for that work. And it's really around that social emotional learning piece and making sure everything that to Gio pointed out, it was a way to formalize it as a process. So capture a kid's heart, you get into their mind a little bit is the thought. So, that was the structural moves that we've made. Now, here we are back to sort of creeping out to post-crisis. I think we're just getting past the survival mode part and getting into we've got this managed to a point we think we're feeling pretty good about it. But we're not looking to do the simultaneous piece. We know what that did. And I'm just because I know that other school districts have tried great things for their staff, the way we recognized it, we took our ESSER money and we created, and it was, equated for everybody. We're not a very large district, so we got a portion of dollars, and we decided to use that for a recognition and retention stipend for our teachers. And the number that we used was $2,020, just to kind of give a troll, like a gigantic trolling of the whole situation of 2020. That went to bus drivers, aides, everybody got $2,020 at the end of the year last year. And it was just something that, I know that doesn't do everything, but it did a lot. And it recognized individuals that when they came back this year, we thanked them again for coming back, first of all. But But that's something that now is in our history. Like that's the way that we treated the people that are here doing the work that Ivy pointed to earlier. Like, there's the customer, but then there's the folks that are actually putting the product out there. That was a big structural change for us. And yeah, there was things, I've read reports about people putting new turf down or a new roof with their ESSER money and all these kinds of things. It was a good opportunity to do some things with that were important. That's the structural move we made on the dollar side, is we gave it back to our staff.
That's great.
Almost all of it, about 80% of it went back to staff.
Well, that's like, I want to be on your staff. Hey, that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, so Rich, where are you weighing in on this whole structural shift conversation?
Yeah, so I have two thoughts. One, as Ivy talked about what she was doing with, oh shoot, lost it. Sorry about that, Ivy. I was going to talk about, I remember what it was. It's why are staff so tired this year? Why are people so frustrated so early in the school year? And what hit me was, everyone had their eye on the prize. We'd been talking for so long about vaccines, and we all believed that the second that we had the opportunity for vaccines, that the end of the road was near. And we've come back to the fall, and a lot of our same concerns and issues that we're dealing with last year, we're still dealing with this year. And so our staff is, to some degree, the wind is out of their sails. And so for me and for what we do, I think supporting staff comes in the form of three things. One is that administration has got to be in the corner of our teachers and be supporting them and being there when they need support and when they need things kind of taken care of or helped with. Second one is resources, providing resources for staff so that they have the things that they need, whether that be technology, digital resources, whatever that happens to be. And then finally, the training component of it. And PD is just so important today. And actually, Giovanni talked about it earlier, how important it was to even sometimes retrain people when it's time, if they need to move. And so PD is so important. But as far as structure goes, one of the things that Amazon's big focus, one of their principles is invent and simplify. And I think that is critically important. And what's really powerful about that statement is not only about inventing, but the focus is on simplifying. Our world is becoming so complex, and there are so many challenges, and there's so much need, and so many things that we ask teachers to do today. What can we as an organization simplify so our teachers can focus on what they need to be doing, and that is working with kids and helping kids be successful. So I think the four things that fit into our structure are addressing students' SEL needs, building relationships strongly with kids and helping understand where they are and where their needs are in that area, using data to inform instruction, not as an autopsy, as mentioned earlier by Victor, but as an information to prepare for the next steps, designing engaging work for kids to do through lesson design, making sure that the learning that we're having kids doing is engaging in the work that they do. And then finally, building on kids' interests, understanding where kids have passion, where kids have interest, and where they want to go with their own lives, and then helping them have choice and voice in selecting where they need to go or what they need to learn so that they can be engaged and motivated to learn. Love
that. And made my mind in the last one go to esports, because that's what they all want. Just gonna say it.
Yeah.
Okay, so final positives. Like, let's all go around and just say something like that's been an outcome of all this that's actually kind of a positive. So Ivy, what's your comment?
Okay, so I have a personal and a professional. So, well, my personal is kind of professional too, but I take time off now and I do not feel guilty about it. And I do not answer emails and I do not answer phone calls. And previously I, like that workaholic type, oh, I've got to be available at all hours. And no, not anymore. Because you need to get away from it sometimes.
Yeah. Hold on just 1 second, because we're going to lose Giovanni in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, go for it.
So you're one positive, and I'm coming back to Ivy.
Well, the one positive is, and that probably speaks to the fatigue, because you can only go above and beyond for so long before it's not sustainable. This was a real whole of community response to an extraordinary situation. I'd like to hope that kind of spirit continues. It doesn't really feel that way at a lot of board meetings that you may pay attention to, but that's not where everything is happening. It's in the daily, it's in the drop-offs in the morning, it's out across all of that work. You know, I love the fact that Dr. Simon mentioned the bus drivers were given stipends. Like, it really was a broad achievement, I think, on the part of a lot of people. And I just, hope, one, we don't just say, oh, that's the new normal, run people on the ground, or two, let's get back to never doing anything unique or different ever again.
Good comment. Thank you. And I know you have to be dismissed now. So.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks.
It was very nice to meet everyone.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Ivy, the rest of your comment, and then I'm going on to Dr. Simon and Rich.
So the professional one has not happened yet, but I have been holding out hope since the beginning. So Missouri, where I am, is we get a lot of our funding is determined by our average daily attendance, which is very limiting because you have to have students physically there. And so when we had virtual students, they had to rethink all of that. And if you're, this Uberization thing, well, when you come to a state where you have to have kids in a seat for us to take attendance in order to get funding, makes it very difficult to be innovative in those ways. So that is hasn't happened yet, but I'm really hoping Missouri rethinks that ADA attendance funding.
Yeah. Don't make me come down there, because I'll tell people.
Do it. You come down.
I'm coming down there. Okay, good. All right, Dr. Simon.
Yeah, I like that. I think, you head down there and you tell them, listen, I think for too many years now, you've been measuring the wrong end of the kid. You've been worried about their butts in the seat. You got to be worried about the other end of the kid. So
I like the way that you said that, quit worrying about the wrong end of the kid.
Yeah. So let's think about how they're engaged, academically. So I've heard that somewhere before. I don't know who to give the royalties to on that quote, but I've heard it somewhere. Listen, it is the silver linings. I mean, I'm someone that's always believed, just part of my own personal upbringing, is that calm seas don't make good sailors. And, so those that have faced a crisis or adversary, some kind of adversarial type of situation and had to think about perseverance and grit in a growth mindset before it all became sort of like popularized and people want to send some of their kids to a grit camp, then spoiler alert, doesn't really work that way. But these are hard earned, like life type experiences that, I appreciate like that. I felt that I was enough for the moment to be able to be a leader, and that felt good. So it was just like, and to know that things stayed moving forward said a lot about our team. So it was just inspirational, like introspective to say, hey, this does matter. Ed leaders do matter. Leadership does matter. And what I would say that's a silver lining to it is I do a lot of adjunct work and some consulting stuff and all that, but like the adjunct work in particular, those courses for those that are aspiring to be superintendents or principals in our state, they're full, so like that's a good thing, like that everyone, they didn't just turn away and say, that's it. There's a shortage, but there is still individuals that were probably put on pretty hard as teachers, that when I think of the next crop of when they become leaders, they have an experience as a teacher that the current leadership group doesn't have, like they didn't have that as teachers. So a superintendent could say, oh, I had to be a superintendent through the pandemic. Principals had it really, really rough. I had to be a principal through the pandemic. But a teacher that was a teacher through the pandemic, that was able to open their doors when many others were closed. Wow. When I think of them going into leadership roles 5, 10, 15 years from now, like they're going to see that organization through a different lens, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that they'll allow the same level of like shock, to occur, the readiness will be different. So that's hopeful. And, but I really believe in it. I really think that these teachers have picked up a skill that, and asked for it, but they served, they met the mark. And I look forward to what the future holds for that entire collective. That would be the hopeful part that I would share.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. It's like they did a tour of duty in Iraq or something. But yeah.
And not to minimize either of the experiences, right? Like it's not to minimize either of them. I've shared this on a podcast once before with a group called School CEO, and it was like, I've had some traumatic experiences personally, and when those things happen, it's like, well, do you have to have traumatic experiences to come around the corner and end up being an effective leader? I mean, no. The short answer is no. I hope not. But wow, do those sort of, everyone's got a plan until they're punched in the face, and I know who to attribute that to. That's Mike Tyson, the great philosopher, right? But everyone's got a plan until they're punched in the face, and then what though? We try to raise in our family our own children this way. Is like it's 10% what happens, and it's 90% of how you respond to it. You can't just sit there and wallow and languish. Like, what are we doing? And I think our profession has done something that others, I don't know anyone really expected this of teachers, but wow, did they step up?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to what it holds for us in the future.
Good. Well, thank you for that. All right. So Rich, you're the wrap up. You got to get everybody home all the way home.
So one of the things that I thought of as Victor was talking was the greatest generation and the world that so many people lived through in the 30s and the 40s in the 20th century, and how that created a generation of people who worked so hard for the good of others. And I wonder if this is not our opportunity to see our teachers as the greatest teaching generation coming out of this. So many hardships and so many challenges, but they've come through it so much stronger. And I see so many, benefits and positives from teachers who now actually know what a learning management system is, and they understand why it's valuable and what they can do with it. They know and understand how to use a variety of technology tools to help them when they need those things, and also when to put them aside when it's time to do something different. So I think that's awesome. The other thing that I think is a silver lining is that parent engagement is up, and we need to harness that parent engagement. I have never seen so many parents come to parent meetings. Why? Because a minute before 7:00, when that meeting starts, they get ready for the meeting. They don't have to leave half an hour early and find a place to park and drive into the building and come over there. They don't have to get dressed, all that. They just turn on their computer because they now know how to get onto a webinar of some sort, onto a Zoom, and they will do it because it's not that hard. They just had to get over the fear of participating. And we have not seen this level of parent engagement before this past year.
Yeah, that's a real blessing. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you for all three of you for sharing with us today. This was awesome conversation. Can't wait to get it out to the whole national audience. We have 310,000 readers. We grew by 95,000 in the last year. Want to also thank our sponsors, ClassLink, Blackboard, Ruckus, Cisco, and Scholastic, for really allowing us to do this virtual tour. And we will be back in your neighborhoods next year physically. We're coming in February, Ivy. And I believe we're coming, Rich will be near you too, and Simon near you. So we're good. So see you next year. Thank you again for being with us. I'm going to release you back into the wild, but thanks for joining us and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Keep up the good work. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay.
Likewise,
all right. Okay, bye.